one thing I think you'll see a lot of this week with Penix, and he's under the radar too, is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson's had a terrific season. He's a great back. He's really gifted. They're a predominant zone running team. They run a ton of outside zone. I think that will be their foundation this week.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. You know it. You love it. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday presented, of course, by DraftKings. I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, 5 teams, 7 years. Most of you know that. Thursdays means we have the unbelievable knowledge being dropped by our guy, Greg Cosell from NFL Films. Absolutely love talking with Greg every Thursday. I do apologize. It's a little bit later than normal. I am out in Los Angeles because I'm doing the Broncos and Chargers tonight on Westwood One Radio. And so I didn't even get out here till after 3 a.m. Eastern. So a little bit later than we normally record. So sorry about that for those of you that count on it for a certain time of the day. This doesn't happen very often. Always do the best we can for each and every one of you. You can check out Greg on social media at Greg Cosell. Tomorrow, I'll announce winners that are people that have spread the word via social media, even if that means rating and reviewing the show at Ross Tucker NFL, at Ross Tucker Pod. Those of you that have taken advantage of any of our sponsors. And then those of you that have made a YouTube comment, I love giving you guys a video. I record on my phone, email it to you, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. All you have to do is make a comment, and I will hopefully pick you as the winner. It's Big Show time. Greg Cosell is always presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly.
The Big Show.
All right, Greg, let's start with my game tonight. Actually, a bunch of good games this weekend and a bunch of standalone games. Let's start with my game tonight and what you're looking at, what interests you with the Broncos and the Chargers.
You know, I think one thing that's interesting to me, and it's not really talked about with these two teams a whole lot, is the Broncos' defense. You know, obviously Nix has talked about, Justin Herbert's talked about, but the Broncos are a really good defense, and I'm sure you've done your work for the game, so you know this. They have one of the highest percentage blitz defenses in the NFL. But what's really fascinating about that is their pressure percentage goes down on third down, not up. But yet they still have one of the highest blitz percentages in the league. They've got two really good edge players that a lot of people may not know about, in Nick Benito and in Jonathan Cooper. Those are really good players. And now that P.J. Locke is back in the secondary, I really like their safeties. Locke and Brandon Jones, I was always a big fan of when he played in Miami. And I actually talked to people that coached him when he was in Miami, and they said he's a really good player. And I think that really shows up on tape. So this defense to me, and Zach Allen, you know guys like Zach Allen, you played against guys like that. They're really difficult to deal with. They may not get 15 or 16 or 17 sacks, but they can dominate games without being big on the stat sheet. This is a really good and tough defense, and it's been somewhat dominant at times this year.
Totally agree. They got a couple good edge rushers. Allen is terrific, what you're looking for as an interior guy. And then, I mean, Surtain is just really, really good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I almost didn't feel the need to mention him because we all know about him. Yeah.
Right. He is, and he helps them quite a bit. People don't even want to throw it where he is. And I even thought, I know Singleton's hurt, but I even thought their off-the-ball linebackers, Justin Sternad and Troy Dye did some good things in their last game. They got a bunch of kind of unheralded guys.
Do. And I'll tell you a guy that, again, and every team needs, because they play nickel so much, and they're a predominant nickel, sub defense. They don't play a ton of dime. That McMillan kid, who is a smaller school kid, he's been a really good player for them for a couple of years, and he's another guy that's not talked about very much.
Totally agree. All right, let's move on to these two Saturday games because they're very, very interesting, and they're big games with playoff teams. You got the Texans and the Chiefs. I don't know how he does it, Greg, but so far Patrick Mahomes has practiced fully so far this week. We had Kalen Bullock, who, speaking of young guys that people don't know, we had Kalen Bullock, the safety for the Texans, on the show yesterday, who's had a really good year, and he told me that they are very much preparing to face Patrick Mahomes, and it looks like they're gonna.
Yeah, I think so. But, and maybe this is a defensive-based show, Ross, but that Texans defense, again, they don't get talked about a whole lot either, and that's another defense that should get talked about a whole lot. And there's a couple of really interesting things about them. Number one, Hunter and Anderson, who are predominantly edge players, although they will line up inside at times in their nickel. They're a nickel defense, not a dime defense. They have the high. Hunter has the highest win rate percentage in the league for an edge player, and Anderson is not far behind. But the thing that's so fascinating about them is they do not need to change personnel. They literally play nickel on almost every snap because Eric Murray and Jimmy Ward are players who have both safety skills and corner skills, and they're both kind of interchangeable players. So since Petrie has gotten hurt and been out, they've been able to play Murray and Ward, and those guys are really good players for them, and they play a lot of single high, and that's exactly what Bullock is. I did him coming out of USC. He's a pure single high post safety. He's got range, he's got instincts, he's got awareness. He's a really good post player. That's what he is. He's not a box safety. He's a post player, and that's the way he's deployed in the context of their defense. They just got Christian Harris back, who started this past week. I have to admit that To'o's had a really good year. I didn't think he'd be this good a pro. He's been really solid for them. They have a really, really good defense that, again, just like Denver, I don't think it gets talked about enough.
Just as background for you, Greg, interestingly, they told me that To'o lost a decent amount of weight, and that's really made a difference in his game. He lost like 15 pounds.
Interesting.
And he's become, he was built more like an older school linebacker. He lost 15 pounds, and it's made him much more athletic and better in coverage, which has really been helpful, especially with the way the NFL game is.
It's funny you say that because one reason I didn't think he'd be a great pro, watching his tape at Alabama and obviously played at Tennessee, he was a 4-year college starter in the SEC, was I didn't think he had quite enough quickness and juice to be a true starter in the league. He was a good football player. Like you could see he had instincts, awareness, but I just didn't think he had the athletic traits to be a starter. But he looks much quicker this year playing in the NFL, and I'm sure that's the reason.
Yeah, he realized he needed to lose weight to be better in coverage, and it's helped a lot, which I love hearing stories like that. Adapt, improve, figure out ways to get better. It's awesome. And then we'll see what Patrick Mahomes can do in that game. I don't know. He's played really well on bad ankles before. I think they were telling me at Kansas City radio this is his 6th ankle sprain, and he's never missed a game.
I know.
I mean, that's wild.
Well, again, I'd focus on Anderson and Hunter versus those tackles. That's going to be very, very interesting. We know those tackles because Tooney's had to go out there and play tackle, and he's not a tackle. But, you do what you have to do to try to survive.
It's a really good point that, that ankle's going to be tested. They're going to make him move, right? He's not going to be able to just stand there.
Without question.
All right, what about the Steelers and the Ravens? Always love when these teams get together, and I didn't realize it till Marlon Humphrey was talking about it. The Steelers have won 8 of 9 against the Ravens. I had no idea.
Jackson's 0-4 in the last 4 games, okay? And I don't know the reason. I wish I did. I only know what the tape shows. But the things the Steelers do, they're not the only team that does those things against Lamar Jackson. But they work against Lamar Jackson, whereas they don't necessarily work when other teams do them. So I don't know, because one thing that the Steelers do really well, and Lamar has struggled with, is a lot of disguise and late rotation and coverage. And they get to cover 2, for instance, in many different ways, so it never looks quite the same. In these 4 losses, the last 4 consecutive losses, Lamar has more interceptions than touchdowns. He's not scored a rushing touchdown. He hasn't run for a lot of yards. They do a really, really good job. And like I said, it's not as if they're reinventing the wheel and are doing things that nobody else has ever done. But I want to say one thing about Todd Monken and Lamar. I think it's really remarkable, Ross, that they have the passing game that they do when on a good percentage of their snaps, they're essentially playing with 4 eligible receivers. Because Patrick Ricard is not really a receiver. So even though he's technically, by rule, an eligible receiver, he's not. So they're playing really with 4 eligible receivers. And to have the passing game that they have playing that way, I think that's a real tribute to Monken and Lamar.
Wow, that's a cool thing. The thing I don't understand about what you said is like it. A lot of people try to do late disguise. And a lot of people try to do that to Lamar Jackson, and he's been tearing everybody else up. I don't
have a great answer, but it works when the Steelers do it.
That is wild. All right, let's talk about the Atlanta Falcons. I think that's obviously one of the major topics this week. They're playing the Giants. That's not what's important. What's important is they made a big change here, Greg, going from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix Jr. I mean, we've all seen that Kirk hasn't played well. I don't even know what to ask. I mean, what do you think happened there? Because it felt like he was playing better earlier in the year.
You know what, Ross? I wish I had a brilliant answer to this. And I don't. Kirk Cousins, has played really at a high level in this league for years and years. He was the kind of quarterback that was a pocket player. He saw things clearly. He had great timing, great anticipation, precise ball location. If you reduce it to simplest terms, he was one of those guys that threw it to the right receiver at the right time with the right kind of throw. He did that year in and year out consistently. You pretty much could pencil Kirk Cousins in every year before the season for 32 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. Yeah, he'd have a bad game or two during the season, but for the most part, that's what he was. And then this year, for some reason, I wish I could be in his head, but he's just not seeing it the right way. He's not delivering the ball when it needs to be delivered. He's an uncomfortable player. Now, a couple of things can be said tactically. They've made him a shotgun quarterback, okay? And to me, again, I don't rip coaching staffs. They know more than I do, so that's not my point. But he's had great success in his career as a play-action quarterback under center. And they've not really deployed him in that way as much this year as what his past has been when he's had great success. I can't speak to the reason why, but that's not what they've done in Atlanta.
Right. So I guess I have assumed, because I think they're last in the league in play action passing, I have assumed that it has something to do with the Achilles. What I don't really understand, Greg, what I don't really understand, and I'm confused by, is he was playing better earlier in the year. You know what I mean? Like I don't like. Yeah. I can understand new offense. I can understand coming off of injury, but he was better earlier in the year.
He sure was. It's funny you say that because I got a call from a coach on Saturday morning after their Thursday night game against Tampa when he threw for 500 yards. And from a coach who'd been in the league for years and years and years, who said that was one of the best passing performances he'd ever seen in all his years in the league, because he was playing against a team, the Bucs, that blitz a lot, and he had to, beat blitz. So, like I said, I don't have a brilliant answer, but one thing I think you'll see a lot of this week with Penix, and he's under the radar too, is Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson's had a terrific season. He's a great back. He's really gifted. They're a predominant zone running team. They run a ton of outside zone. I think that will be their foundation this week.
Let's talk about Detroit and Chicago. The struggles continue for Caleb Williams, but going against this Lions defense, which just lost 3 more guys, I don't know, maybe this is the right team for him to be playing now.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously on offense, the Lions offense has not lost a ton of people, and they can still score. We know that. I mean, they lost Montgomery, so we'll see what they do with Gibbs, although Craig Reynolds is the next man up, and he's played for them over the years, so, he'll get meaningful snaps, I would imagine. But the Lions defense, they've just lost so many people. But the Bears on offense, I mean, I don't know if you watched the Monday night game. I thought Troy Aikman was really honest about Caleb Williams. Obviously, Troy does his work, watches tape, knows the position, better than you or I do. What really struck me is something he said, and now that when I watched tape this week, it was resonating in my brain the whole week when he said, quarterback sacks are on the quarterback. He said, if you don't want to get sacked, you don't have to get sacked. And I've thought about that for years in a different way, but when Troy said it, it resonated with me, and I think that's 100% true. Now, you played offensive line, unless there's a true jailbreak and a guy gets there in like 1 second, and there's just a totally blown first level assignment. Quarterback sacks are way, way more often on the quarterback than on the O-line. And Troy spent a lot of time talking about that with Caleb Williams. And I've seen every Caleb Williams snap this year, and that's a very fair statement.
1,000%. It's funny because as soon as he said it, I posted it on social media, and I've long said that. I think pressures, you could argue, are on the offensive line. But, whether or not you actually get hit, whether or not you actually get sacked, I think a lot of that has to do with, the quarterback, right? There's certain guys over the years, Manning, Brady, Breeze obviously come to mind, that just didn't get sacked that much. Williams really has a tendency to kind of put his eyes down, to look at the rush coming, to try. I think he's had so much success in high school and college making the rush miss, extending plays, and making them big plays, that he still is trying to do that in the NFL, and he cannot do it nearly as well at this level.
And his movement, because of that, looks, to me, just watching both games on TV and then the tape in detail, his movement looks random. Like, I don't feel like when you watch a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes move, they always feel like they're moving. There's a purpose. Like, you feel something good is going to happen because they're in charge of their movement. It's calculated. It's controlled. Williams, and we're not making a comment about what happens in his career, by the way. I don't want people to think I'm saying that, he can't be any good. He's a rookie quarterback in the NFL. Maybe in 3 years we'll be saying he's great. I hope so. It's great for the league when young quarterbacks become great. But right now he just looks frenetic and uncontrolled.
Greg, let's talk about the Titans and the Colts, mainly because it's my game for CBS. And
there you go.
I don't know if you have any thoughts. The Titans are making the quarterback change again because of Levis and the turnovers. I found watching the Colts really interesting. Richardson, Greg, he makes some incredible throws and then misses some easy ones. It almost looks to me like his feet are hardly ever set when he's throwing the football. I mean, you're not supposed to do that as a quarterback.
No, and he struggles to see things right now. He's not. I don't think he's making the needed connection between the route concepts and the coverage. So his processing is slow. But you're right. There's 2 or 3 throws a game that you go, wow, that's a really, really good throw. But there's some really, again, I'm not a numbers guy, but usually when I watch a guy and I see things on tape, sometimes then I look at numbers to see if it validates what I see. He is really bad on third down and surprisingly bad on first down, which most coaches will tell you is the best down to throw because you tend to get more predictable front looks and more predictable coverage looks. And he's really poor on both those. Third down probably doesn't surprise many, although he's so bad on third down, much worse than any other quarterback in the league. So right now, again, we're not defining his whole career, but he has a long way to go. I know you will expect this during the game. You're going to see a lot of design runs because Shane Steichen's trying to win a football game, and you're going to see a lot of design runs.
Yep, that wouldn't surprise me at all. What about the Eagles and the Commanders? Eagles, another nice performance against the Steelers, but now they got to do it again against Washington.
Yeah, I think that Eagles offensive coaching staff's doing a terrific job. This was Jalen Hurts' best game of the season. He was as decisive in the pocket as any game this year. The ball came out. He had 37 dropbacks. Only 5 of them did he move. The ball came out. They are really good with no huddle. This week they added empty sets. You know what no huddle and empty does to the defense. It really helps the quarterback pre-snap see what he's looking at, and it makes it very clear and defined for him because the defense has to get set. And if it's no huddle, they spread out so you really see it clearly. And I thought that really helped Jalen Hurts. It would help any quarterback, but he played so decisively. And you always have, even though Barkley didn't have 100 yards, you combine that with the fact that you always have the physicality of that O-line and the physicality of the run game, and that makes them hard to defend.
Unbelievable. I mean, Greg, that last drive, 10.5 minutes.
10.5. I can't recall ever seeing that, Ross. Could you? That
No.
long?
No. And they close out a lot of games.
Yes,
which
they
is
do.
so much harder to do than people realize, because usually they know you're running it. Now, they converted some third downs, but it's
But they
super
were third and
impressive.
twos and third and ones. There was only one third down. That was 3rd and 5, I believe. It was all third and twos and third and ones.
What about Minnesota and Seattle, Greg? I was really surprised the way the Packers took it to Seattle out there.
Yeah. Well, Minnesota, Seattle, again, everybody wants to talk about Darnold. He's having a great year, and I think Hawkinson being back now is a really big factor for them. We've talked about their defense. It's a very difficult defense to play against. They'll give up some yards and some points because they blitz so much, and there's a lot of moving parts to that defense. But it's very hard to play against. I mean, as an offensive lineman, Ross, with these teams that line up with 6 and 7 man front looks. Obviously, they're not going to be bringing 7 guys. Nobody really does that. But you just don't know who. I mean, it's really hard. You could tell me better than I could tell you. But, the teams like the Vikings that line up with all these 6-man fronts, 7-man fronts, and you just don't know who's rushing, who's dropping out. You don't know what the coverage look will be when guys drop out. It's just a hard defense to play against schematically and tactically.
Yeah, and then just 2 teams, I guess. Well, I just want to get to the Bucs and the Cowboys. The Cowboys all of a sudden have kind of found themselves, and oh my gosh, watching the Bucs tear up the Chargers, that was something else.
Yeah, well, the Cowboys, they're a very interesting team now. I think they've won 3 out of 4, and I imagine if I told you, which I'm going to, and that most people would go, what? Over the last month of the season, Barkley is the leading rusher in the league over the last 4 games. The second leading rusher in the NFL is Rico Dowdle in the last 4 games. And what did we talk about all season with the Cowboys? That they couldn't run the ball. So all of a sudden, they're running the ball. Dowdle has 14 runs of 10 yards or more in the last 3 games. Think about that. That's a big, big number. So now they have a running game that means something, and that changes everything because now your defense plays fewer snaps. Now the defense becomes a bigger factor. You're controlling the pace and tempo of games. You know what that's like as an O-lineman, Ross, when you feel like you're controlling the game. Okay, everything changes in all phases of the game.
No question. Check him out on social media. As you can tell, he is fantastic. Absolutely love having him on the show every single week. He's on the Matchup Show on the weekend. It's a terrific TV show you should check out at Greg Cosell. Greg, thank you so much for moving back a little bit this week for me being on the West Coast. I really appreciate it.
Well, enjoy the game tonight, Ross. Thanks so much.
Greg is amazing, just like westshorehome.com/Ross is amazing. They have their biggest discount of the year. I love this as a holiday gift. Maybe it's just a gift to yourself. 25% off the entire project. Payments as low as $99 a month or interest-free with no payments and no interest until 2026. Listen, what can you get from them? An incredible full bath remodel that I guarantee your wife will love. Even just a new shower, so you don't have that fiberglass tub to step over and into. People don't use those anymore. Get a brand new shower like we did. It's awesome, especially when you get in your 50s and 60s or you're a former O-lineman like me. Or the new doors. I got 3 new doors. Love them all. They just feel better. They sound better. I didn't even know how much of a difference it would make. It's all about westshorehome.com/Ross. That's westshorehome.com/Ross to get that great deal. A lot of holiday parties going on. Hopefully everywhere you go, or certainly if you're hosting the party, they have Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka and an official vodka partner of the NFL. Obviously, more opportunities this year to watch football and make delicious Smirnoff cocktails than ever before. We already had Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Now there's 2 games on Christmas. Then you got the Saturday games after that. This holiday season, when you're enjoying the game and your cocktails, please make sure to drink responsibly. Take a minute, make a plan, never drive impaired. Smirnoff, we do game days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff #21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Ducks Takes.
All right, Ross, we got a game tonight. It's one you might know about. The Chargers, they are hosting the Broncos. Who are you liking in this one?
Ooh, this is a tough one. I mean, this is really a tough one for a lot of different reasons. This is my Thursday night football pick presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. The Broncos have won 4 straight by 9 points or more. They're playing very well. The Chargers have lost 3 of 4. They can't run it very well. Even the game they won was the Kirk Cousins interception fest down in Atlanta. I'm going to have to go with the Broncos just based on the way they played. I do think sometimes in the NFL, when you think the one team's playing great and the other team's playing terrible, then the team that was playing terrible wins. But I'm going to go with what I've seen from these teams over the past month or so. I don't know how you don't. Don't think there's a ton of points. I'll say 20-17 Broncos.
Titans head coach Brian Callahan, he goes off on the notion that his team is soft.
That was awesome. I can't wait to talk to him about that. That was awesome. Soft. Have you ever watched the Titans play? I mean, like Jeffrey Simmons and the way their corners are up playing press man. I don't know who asked him the question, but it's a very, very not smart question. The Titans don't play soft at all. Now, they don't play well. They turn it over. But there's no softness. I mean, I love what he said. Can you imagine telling Tavondre Sweat and Jeffrey Simmons or Harold Landry or any of the Kenneth Murray they're playing soft? Good luck.
Couple injury notes. Browns running back Nick Chubb is going on IR with a broken foot, while the Texans, they activate Kenyon Green, and practice windows open for Jonathan Allen of the Commanders and Bryce Huff of the Eagles.
Right. I mean, absolutely awful for Nick Chubb again. I guess at least it's only a broken bone. It sounds bad saying that, but it's just one way to, it's just something I think about as opposed to something really terrible in his knee. Kenyon Green's the former first-round pick. They had actually moved Titus Howard to left guards. I don't know if Kenyon Green will be out there. And Jonathan Allen and Bryce Huff could be difference makers in the postseason for both of those teams. We'll see what they're like coming off these injuries, but both the Commanders and the Eagles getting reinforcements exactly when they need it. Other than that, picks Friday tomorrow and a winner's Friday. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. It is not too late. I actually think it's better to buy this for a loved one, and then you give it to them, and you tell them, hey, I'm having a story written about you. Can you imagine the anticipation of them waiting for the story to come? Incredible. MyFrontPageStory.com, BackOfficeScheduler.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.